This is Comic Geek Speak, Book of the Month Club, Episode 4, Fables. Welcome to Comic Geek Speak, brought to you in conjunction with WorldFamousComics.com. I'm Brian Deemer.
I'm Tasha Deemer.
I'm Kevin Moyer.
I'm Lynn Heck.
I'm Shane Kelly.
I'm Jamie D.
I'm Peter the Wolf. Peter and the Wolf, Peter Pan.
How lame was that?
Hey, Peter the Great.
How about petered out?
Getting in the mood.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
How about Peter Pan? Okay, Peter Pan.
Peter
Prancing
Pan.
around
Grow
your little
up.
tights.
So that's his real history then?
I think we'll just call you Tinkerbell from now on and be done with it.
Thanks, Matt.
Skip over.
All right. Well, Jamie, we picked this one for you.
And I thank you very much. I've been enjoying this book since the very beginning.
Oh, wait. Spoiler.
Yes, we are going to be spoiling this first book at least.
So don't listen if you haven't read it.
Yeah. And hopefully you have. But it's well worth the read. Like I said, I've been reading this. I've been trying to get these guys to read it. I know some of them do like the Vertigo stuff. And they finally decided to make this a Book of the Month Club selection, which I'm very happy they did. And it gave me an excuse to finally go back and reread it. And I enjoyed it as much the second time through that I did the first time. And I will be honest with you, reading this, and I think they're up to issue 41. Everything he has done in this book, you will find up through 41, has been laid out in these first 5-6 issues.
Really?
Including you actually do see the big mystery of this book. And not so much this first one, because this first one basically sets up the characters. But you will find out the big mystery in the book is who is the adversary. Who he is. I'll start out. This book goes along the premise that all the fables are real. Every fable you've ever read, Snow White, the Three Bears, Three Little Pigs, are all real, and they lived in an alternate realm or alternate reality. And hundreds of years ago, an adversary came and basically started wiping them out, started killing them, taking over their lands, so on and so forth. And they have escaped to our reality. And all the human or human type, or ones can disguise themselves as human, have enough money to get charms and the such, live in Fabletown, which is in New York City. Any that don't or can't or aren't human live in what they call the farm, which you don't really see that much in this book, but that will be the second book if you decide to go on and read it. And it's a murder mystery. Starts as a murder mystery. It really sets up this storyline, this story and this concept just so well. And like I said, if you go and you read and you go back and reread, everything he has set up is there. And I was just amazed. So I really want to hear what all the rest of you thought of it, because I've really been waiting for you to read this and comment.
How about we give a shout out to who actually wrote it and drew it? Bill Willingham, Lan Medina is the penciler, Steve Leialoha, Craig Hamilton are the inkers, Todd Klein letterer, Sherilyn Van Valkenburg colorist, James Jean and Alex Malev original series covers. Although I think Alex Malev only did like the first one, and then all the rest are signed by James Jean. Jean.
It's Jean.
Jean.
Yeah.
It was a quick read. It wasn't anything that there's very little narration, I should say. And you're right, it is a setup, for all the characters and who they are, and some of them aren't, aren't explained. You have to really kind of go, which fairy tale is that?
Dig deep into your fairy tales to remember. Yeah.
One of the things I did, and I sent it out, is there's a website, Fabletown Virtual Library. I'll put a link up on the show notes. That kind of goes through and explains who all the characters are and what fairy tales they're from, and And some of them I was like, wow, I didn't know that. I didn't know the janitor, was the Frog Prince, and what was another one that? The guard at the desk, the policeman who becomes a troll later on. You see his true form later on. He's like the bridge troll for the
Billy Goat's Gruff.
Thank you, Billy Goat's Gruff. So that was kind of cool. It was like, well, look at that.
All in all, I just thought it was really good. I picked up the second trade in Baltimore Con, 50% off, so I'm getting ready to read that.
It's along the lines of what Alan Moore did with, and by no means am I saying that Alan Moore came up with the idea of putting all the literary characters together from in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. It's the same, like Jamie said, it's the same idea, and this has been done before, even before comics. It's not like this is a new idea of sticking all these things together. But I was surprised, I have to say, at the artwork. I thought it was much cleaner than the covers and the original and even the trade cover makes it seem. I was like, when I opened it up, I went, oh, it's very. Almost reminds me of like some of the Vertigo stuff they were doing like in the 90s where it's real characters and real places and real clothing and it's slightly cartoony but comic booky. So I was surprised by that, and it's sort of, for me, it's funny when he actually goes into like the Fables part of it, like what actually happened in the Fable world, it gets a little more fanciful, but I was kind of like, I kind of was expecting something else. So I can't say that I hated it, but I was like, oh, okay, pretty decent. Anybody else think the same thing?
I enjoyed it enough that I'm going to pick up the second trade and read it and go from there. I like the concept. I loved the first few issues. The part that I wasn't thrilled with was just the explanation of the murder mystery. I kind of picked that out. But there again, I think that that's something that you could do reading it. I mean, the way it ends is how I thought it would end, as far as who did the killing, who was murdered, not murdered. But I relate it very much so to Starman, where when I read that first trade before I got the issues, I read that first trade and I was like, eh. And like other people have said, eh. But as you read it, and I've heard it explained the way Jamie says, where so much gets flushed out and so much shows up in later issues that is covered in this first issue, I'm very intrigued to read it now, more so than ever, because I want to see just how much flushes out. I'm very interested in these characters and see how they're written through the rest of the series.
Yeah, for me, if this was coming out monthly, I'd have to say I probably would get the first 5 issues and then I probably would have stopped, because I actually didn't know that there was a whole, who was the adversary. I didn't get that from this. So
yeah, when you were explaining that to me the other off the air, Jamie, I was like, "What do you mean? Who?"
I didn't realize
know that I was
no
supposed
mystery.
to wonder who the adversary was.
Yeah. Now that I did get when I was reading it.
Did you?
Yeah.
Because they show like the little
was
goat
his name,
guy,
the adversary. Okay,
right.
So that's who he is. I didn't know there was a mystery.
And then what probably would have happened is, months down the road, everybody would have said, "Oh, are you still reading Fables?" And I would say, "No, I stopped it after the first story." They said, "Oh, well, you need to pick it up." And I probably would have went back and then read it and go, "Oh, okay, now it's kicking in."
Well, how many times has that come about? I mean,
all the time
with Preacher, anything like that.
People say with Starman.
Yeah, the first trade you read it and it's like, yeah, it's okay. But then when you read the second one, that's where it really hooks you. I mean, all the way. And that's what happened with me with Preacher. And this, I hated this. I really didn't. No, I'm just kidding.
Nobody says you have to like it.
I mean, I didn't walk away from it and go like, I regretted reading it. I regretted taking the time reading it. I did walk away with it and go, I thought it was very interesting and very well done. I thought it was a unique play on the characters. I thought it was a unique way to have them set up in this reality and to have the identities they had and the personalities they had. I love Bigby Wolf. I think he's so cool. He's like, and I was just talking to Scott about it today, and I didn't even mention that to him yet, and he said that after I think it's the March of the Wooden Soldiers storyline, there's a two-issue story arc with him in World War II with the monsters and stuff. Yep. And I'm like, I got to read that. I just got to get that. Yeah, I can't wait to read that.
Bigby by far, and it's Bigby as in Big Bad Wolf.
Right.
He's like the sheriff of Fabletown. And from the very beginning, he was my favorite character. And like you said, down the road, you do find out a little bit about him. I don't want to ruin too much. There's a romance with Bigby, which they're setting up in this. And it just shows he was like a behind the trenches type spy, and all I have to say is big bad wolf against the Frankenstein monster.
Excellent.
And that's all I got to tell you.
I'm all over it. So yeah, everything that he said about it, and what little bit. I mean, he didn't tell me the whole story. He didn't get into it. He just basically told me what you told me, and I was like, I gotta read that because I love the old Universal monster movies, and I love World War II stuff and Egyptian stuff. And when hearing that, I was like, I gotta read this. And I love Bigby, so I was like, the whole central focus is with him.
And from what I understand, he is actually going to start this. 41 was the end of the adversary story. And 42, he's going to start another storyline, and he's going to start incorporating more fables as of other country fables. Russian fables.
Other
I'm sure
Egyptian.
Yeah,
okay.
He'll do on that. I will tell you, of all of these, and like I said, I've been reading it since the beginning. This is actually probably the weakest of the storylines. I mean, I love the two that are my favorite are the second one, which is entitled Animal Farm, and it takes place on, like I said, the farm out in upstate New York. And it has apparently it brings in all the. I keep hitting the damn microphone stand. It brings
Talk
in
with your mouth, not with your hands.
I'm Italian. I cannot do that.
Sit on them.
I have a tough time doing that as well.
But it incorporates the fables along with the Telltale Animal Farm, the George Orwellian
I kind of figured that
storyline.
was going to be that part of it, yeah.
And then there's also another one called March of the Wooden Soldiers, which you mentioned, which is basically the adversary attacking Fabletown. And it's really kind of cool. It's Pinocchio is actually a big part of that because, and I don't want to ruin anything.
Yeah,
but
you already said too much.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
So,
but no, for me, this was a good setup story. It wasn't blockbuster. It wasn't something like wow, but I thought I'm very intrigued and I want to read more of it. And again, along that premise that we always say with like The Preacher and stuff like that, you can't go by the first one.
See, now I fall into the category where I read this and I was wishing if I would have had the second and third trades with me, I would have plowed right through them. And of course I did the same thing with Preacher. I loved it from I think the second page. I wasn't going, I was hooked immediately, so I felt the exact same way with this one.
See, when I read Preacher, I read the first trade, and for some reason after I was done with that, I had to decompress because it was I don't know, it just seemed like a lot for me, and and allowing that time for that to process, and then after Peter recommending that the storyline in the second one was so enticing and so well done, I thought, okay, well, I'll give it another shot, and I did, and that's how I was. As soon as I read that second trade, I immediately read the third and the fourth right back to back. I couldn't wait to read one after the other. I got totally hooked. So I kind of get a feeling this is going to be what's similar with this for me is that this was basically set up for me. I really enjoyed the art. I thought the art was phenomenal. I was just like you from seeing the covers on the shelf. I really didn't. I expected this kind of quirky, kind of Ashley Wood kind of style art and stuff like that, and when I opened it up and started reading, I was like, wow, this art is amazing. I thought it was really neat.
I'm trying to come up with other artists that he's similar to. I mean, it's going to sound weird, but he's almost like the when Chuck Patton did the 80s Justice League, and it was very clean. His line work was very clean, and there was detail in the background, but it's not heavy detail. He let certain panels be kind of open and just a wall or something like that. But then you get to that double spread of the Fables fleeing, and that's a really nice double spread page.
I was going to say it kind of reminds me of JSA, just consistently good artwork.
Yeah,
your kind of standard comic book artwork.
Right.
To me, the feeling I got from it, the artist that popped into my head was Brian Boland. I thought that it's that
if he did
a monthly book instead of just doing the covers, that if he would do a monthly sequential art in a monthly book, that's what it would more or less look like.
They honestly try to keep the same art style, and another artist that works on the later issues is Mark Buckingham.
Okay.
So
it goes right along with that.
It goes
then.
right along. I think this melds nicely into Mark Buckingham. It is. You're right. I mean, it's clean. You can differentiate between the different characters. You know who. Nobody like melds together.
Right. And plus, I mean, everything is drawn. The scenery and everything. It's nothing. Nothing looks incomplete, or nothing looks like there's no consistency. Everything is done, like you said, not one character looks like another character in there. They all have differences, and the scenery and everything that's brought about it is in detail and sets it up, the story, very nicely. I thought the storytelling of the art was very well done as well. Toughest part I had was just reading the dialogue from the Beast in the beginning in the first issue. I started reading it, and I'm trying to read fast. And I was like, I can't do that with that. I had to go back and read it like 3 times just to comprehend what he was saying. Yeah, and then I was like, okay, I just got to take it easy.
For me, I love crime mysteries, whether on TV and books. And this was awesome, and it was great to have a fairy tale twist to the whole thing. And I loved that they made Prince Charming out to be this womanizing jerk kind of guy. I thought that was great.
Yeah, you literally find out he has been married to Snow White, Cinderella. I mean, all the princesses who have their Prince Charming, he was the same Prince Charming that's been married to all of them.
Which I think is very, very unique. Very cool.
And one of the issues, they all sit down for lunch or breakfast and start talking about him. So it's just amazing the detail that he puts into it. Just the little twists and turns he puts in it. It's just
like I love that old King Cole was the mayor.
Yeah.
I mean, who else would be the mayor
Exactly.
but old King Cole?
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with you, Tasha, because one of my favorite, when I got a feeling of reading this, it brought me back to reading one of my favorite independent books, which May's Agency, which is all murder and all mysteries. It's all that whodunit stuff, and it sort of reads like that type of style, and I enjoy that as well, and that's one aspect I liked about this. So that's what made me like Bigby more than just the regular one of the other characters. I liked him as much, but him being the detective and all that stuff, I really enjoyed it.
It's great. It's very like Sherlock Holmes-ish kind of thing.
When you were talking about art, I kind of went with Kevin McGuire a little bit because I thought all their facial expressions were very well expressed. Maybe not. It certainly doesn't copy his style, but it's very expressive the way he does his faces.
When you were talking about the blending of all the fairy tales and the fables, and I'm going to sidestep out of comics for just a second, much to Brian's dismay. But there's a musical called Into the Woods that does exactly the same thing, where the woods becomes the central part of the story, because every fairy tale, some Hansel and Gretel walk through the woods, Snow White walking through the woods, Red Riding Hood, same thing. And the concept, again, is the whole thing of what if all these characters existed, and then the second act is, what really does it mean to be happily ever after? And you come to find, it's not, because people, half of them die by the end of the thing. There's this whole huge story with the giant's wife, and it's hysterical. And one of the funny things in the musical is that the guy whoever plays the wolf in the first act plays Prince Charming in the second act. And Prince Charming is married to Cinderella. But then later in the act, or in the second act, he actually can't. I'm gonna smack his hand. He's turning my mic down.
So much for Broadway. Let's get back to comic books.
He actually finds Snow White later on, so it's exactly the same thing. Where these princes are, they're always showcased as womanizers.
They actually did that play at our high school. I think it was when I was in 9th grade or 10th grade or
Adam
something.
in it?
Adam was in it. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he was. I mean, he was in every single
hysterical.
play.
I mean, you talk about this Fables adversaries. When I'm reading, I'm going, my God, this is just like Into the Woods, where this giant comes down and kills half all these people.
I agree with you, Peter.
Yeah.
I saw that one on Broadway. That was a great show.
It's great. It's great.
I brought the soundtrack because we were trying to think if we could use music from it, and there's a great
opening. Never fly with these uncultured folks here.
It was a great speaking part where it starts out once upon a time, but then there's like all the singing that really disrupts the flow of the spoken word from the narrator. But I love it.
There's a majority and a minority, and
right. And
the
right
minority,
now,
the minority of the room
losing.
is the one that don't go to the theater,
right.
which
So if you're a
And
fan of
he
Fables,
he has control of the volumes. And that's the problem.
You're goddamn right, I do.
if you like Fables and you like musicals, go see Into the Woods.
Definitely go
That's
see
what
that.
I'll say.
Hey, we got a listener email here concerning Fables. It says, hey guys, this is from Joe Jans from Iowa again. No, not John Jones or Jeff Johns or any other JJ. Actually, I have been posting on the forum as Soda, which is my own blog, Soda, SODUH.blogspot.com. It says, Fables, loved it. I don't really buy trades, but I have to say with this whole Book of the Month thing, I am seriously reconsidering my thought process on it all. So far, Fables and Daredevil Guardian Devil are now in my collection. I started out really enjoying the whole concept of storybook characters in our own universe, thinking how they would interact and fit into our society. Then something dawned on me midway through the book. Did I really care that they were storybook characters? Did I even notice? Was it even important to the story? I don't really think it is. Outside of the reason behind the festival, I barely was noticing that it was Snow White or Jack. That fact seemed to be less important as the story evolved. Not that all is necessarily bad. I was still enjoying the story, the characters, all of it. I thought it was actually a good point that this story could hold my interest based on the plot alone and not having to rely totally on who the characters once were in a different story. That being said, I did find myself cursing out the entire cast towards the end of the book. What a bunch of cowards. You don't celebrate your homeland if you got kicked out of it. Put down the champagne and pick up a weapon. Fight for your land. I hope that issue is dealt with in future books. Outside of sensing some bestiality issues when I saw the pig waking up on Wolf's couch, I thought the entire book was a very good read. Okay, that's my 2 cents. Keep it up, guys. You're making my drives home go by so quickly. He says, P.S. Don't think I didn't hear all the cracks about Chaos Comics. Maybe I will have to send in a Lady Death, Evil Ernie, and Purgatory Stump the Rios. Well, thank you, Joe.
He wants to hear me snap again.
Yeah. I have to say, to be honest, that I would have never read this book if it weren't be the fact that it was suggested as a book of the month, and I was fortunate to be able to read it. And I would have never picked it up.
I'm the same way. I love Vertigo books. But this one, the concept sounded stupid to me. I don't really care about, fairy tales and all that stuff. It's not my bag. Even as a kid, I wasn't necessarily that into them. And then Jamie kept saying that, and it's one of those things where I wanted to read the first issue and go, yeah, this sucked, see? So you can live in your fantasy world and think you like it. But then I read it, and I loved it. So, I was proved wrong.
The power of the shiznit. That's all I got to say.
But I wouldn't say that.
But he did point out a good thing in his email that I felt the same thing as too, is that if it wasn't for the fact that they, discovering the characters as they were being brought into the story, other than that, I didn't really pay that much attention. As I'm reading the story and already knew who the characters were, it didn't matter to me. Mm-hmm. I mean, once I got introduced to the characters, and once I got introduced in their personas, which I thought was really cool. I thought some of the way the characters were brought into it were just so phenomenally done. And after that, I didn't care. It wasn't a focus like, okay, what's going to happen? Who's this? Who's that? It was just so well written. You don't really have to put that kind of attention into it. Or if that's your reason why you want to read it, is because you like some of the old fairy characters and stuff like that. That it's not necessary, to enjoy the story.
But yet, there's some of there are some of the most modern day people. You're trying to associate them with modern day people, but they all know how to sword fight because they were all taught how to sword fight and all this stuff. So, I don't know.
There's an air to them. Like as I'm reading, I'm like, you can tell they're not your normal everyday person that you meet on the street. They the way he wrote them, the dialogue that they have, you do sense that there's something more than, and then, like you said, they have all this other knowledge. And I was actually I was happily surprised that in the middle of the issue where Bigby goes to stop Bluebeard, that he changes into the wolf.
I loved it.
I didn't think, I was like, okay, are we ever really going to see their other version. So I was happily surprised with that. I was like, thank. I'm glad he did that.
I was too.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite moments in the whole story was when he changed, and I was like, awesome. You know, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't he?
Right.
You know, just because he has to be in human form to blend in with his surroundings, when he's not in that persona and he needs to flex his muscle, you know, utilize it. Why not?
And that was one of the cool things that they put in. If you noticed a couple times, Bigby in the shadow. They had like a shadow of Bigby, and you could see the wolf shadow. So even though you're seeing his human persona, you see the wolf shadow. And I always thought that was cool. Yeah, this book is just one of those books that if he had played it another way, it wouldn't have worked. If he had played it like Brian was saying, Fables, blah blah blah. But the fables are there, and like everybody is saying, the fables are there. But there's just that he tweaks them that way that it just makes it worth a read. And again, not so much in this one. In the next book, in the Animal Farm, it's the exact same way. You're introduced to the characters, but they have such different and varied personas, especially from the Goldilocks and the Three Little Bears alone. The Three Bears, I should say, alone from the persona in the comic are just so different. You're just looking. It's just good, solid storytelling with a point A, a point B, a point C, and as I was saying, it's all there when you get to 41, which I'm hoping you all do, and you look back and you say, "Wow, he did have it all there." So
it's almost like he has a story, but to add a plus to it, he utilizes the Fable characters. Mm-hmm. That's how I view it. That it's not here's the Fable characters. Let's base something around that. It's like it's not the way that it's approached, I feel. It's like putting the Fable characters and putting the twists and the things that you add to the characters and the things you don't expect from the characters make an added plus to the whole storyline and make it more wonderful, I feel.
I kind of like how a few times they mentioned that they gave everybody a clean slate when they came into the real world, and you can't talk about things that happened before. I thought that was pretty interesting, and I'm wondering when you get down the road later, do little snippets of that come through that they like, nope, that's how you used to be. Don't do it.
And don't mention the dwarves.
Yeah, they have. I will admit they haven't gone into that. I'm kind of hoping he goes into that somewhere down the road. But
one thing that I like about this story, it was the same thing with Alan Moore's League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. It makes me want to go read the resource material where I read an interview with Bill Willingham where he said, I'm taking leeway. There's some things that I'm changing here and there. It may not ring exactly true, but when you look at all the fairy tales, and how they morphed through the ages, they went from these things that you scared your kids with to these light and fluffy Disney versions. So there are multiple versions of these characters, but I want to read all the books that Alan Moore based League on, and I want to read all the fairy tales now to really. How will my experience become deeper for it? Probably yes. Same thing with movies. Movies are the same. You always want to go. When I first saw High Fidelity, and then at the end it said based on the book I was like, oh, well, I got to read it, and the book, just enriched everything.
And just to give a shout out to Bill Willingham, if you liked this, I will highly recommend his work on an independent called Elementals.
You bet.
Which was, I knew Kevin was going to chime in.
You bet.
He and I have talked about this before.
Yeah.
And we actually talked about it on the forum on CGS.
Did he write that, or did he just draw it?
He wrote it and drew it.
Wrote and drew.
Okay. Yeah, he did both.
And it was just a great superhero book, adult as in adult material.
As you're going
to
get,
both ways. I mean, as adult themed and bump it down, that stuff too. But it's just so good. If you like this, definitely seek that out. Haven't been thrilled with his Robin and Day of Vengeance. I haven't read the last one yet, but I haven't been totally thrilled with that either. But that and Elementals definitely, Fables and Elementals, I think are his two hits.
I agree with you because when I saw that he was the writer on this, I wasn't as enthused as I kind of felt I should be because, what have I really read from him lately and what I did read from him really didn't, resonate with me that much. But after reading this, I thought of that immediately because I loved Elementals. That was one of my favorite independent comics that came out in the 80s. It was so well done. The characters, again, were so well done. Played around the theme of the elements of, the earth, water, fire, and air.
For all you Mike Turner fans, there was a character called Fathom before there was a Fathom.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And Elementals is just phenomenal. There's some interesting themes he plays with throughout the book. It's unfortunate that he went through his own personal turmoil, and the book kind of took a toll for that. I know it was hot. It was hot as hell when those issues were coming out, and then they started coming out months and months late.
Yeah.
And then he was, it was released that he was having a nervous breakdown or had a nervous breakdown, but he still kept trying to do it. Mm-hmm. And, you got to take into consideration, too, that was when there was no internet. So you didn't find this stuff out, instantaneously and stuff. So it was something that transpired throughout. But even after the book was picked up, with Kamiko and they started doing it, I still enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I still liked the characters, and they still were written kind of well, and I enjoyed the artwork. I really liked his artwork on the Elementals. I mean, I thought the stories were done well, but I liked Bill Willingham's take on the characters. It had that cartoony, but yet not too cartoony kind of thing to it. It was a unique style of art at the time, and I wish they would put that out in trade.
Yeah,
I would buy those in a heartbeat.
I would like to see somebody pick those rights up and
you bet,
and reprint them.
That's a lost treasure there.
We got another comment from a listener. This one's from Bruce Rosenberger, and he actually sent in an audio comment, so let's listen to that.
Hey guys, Bruce R. here. You asked for our thoughts on Fables, Legend, and Exile, so here they are. The plot of this graphic novel, and yes, I'm sure it was intended to be a graphic novel, it was just published as 5 separate issues first, is really your basic whodunit mystery story. With one exception, all the clues that you, the reader, will need to solve this mystery, save one, are given to you in the first issue. The biggest clue, and frankly the only one that I figured out, is given to you at the end of the second issue. In fact, I can't believe I missed the clues in the first issue, as they are presented so obviously. At the end of issue 4, Willingham pauses, much like the old Ellery Queen TV shows. Is my age showing? And challenges the readers to figure the mystery out. The 5th issue is spent explaining the solution, followed by some cleanup. The main thing that strikes me about this story is that there is no reason for it to be presented with the fairy tale characters. So I guess I'm wondering why Willingham did. Why not present it as a straight murder mystery? Is it more saleable in this format? Now on to the art. The pencils are by Lan Medina. They're serviceable. One disturbing thing, though, Medina seems to like to draw from an angle where we're looking down on the characters. The problem is, many of them are off. The perspective is skewed. And quite frankly, I don't know whether to blame this on Medina or the main inker on the book, Steve Leialoha. The one issue inked by another, Craig Hamilton, does not suffer from the same problem. Well, at first glance, but looking again, I find faint traces of the flaw. So I think I have to place the blame with Medina. The covers are beautifully rendered, and when I look at the title page, I see that original series covers are by Alex Maleev. But then I notice they are signed JJ. On further investigation, I finally realized that I missed James Jean's name, and Maleev is only responsible for one cover, and it's one that I don't think fits the series at all. It's not bad art, it just doesn't fit. Because, seeing the other covers by James Jean, I realized that's what the book needed. It needed an artist that rendered it in a non-realistic style. I think that would have made it work for me. An artist with an imagination and a slightly cartoony style, someone like, let's see. Oh, wait, look at these illustrations for the text story at the back of the book. Now that artist would have been perfect. Now, who did them? Search. Well, what do you know? They're by Bill Willingham himself. Okay, so summing it all up, a mystery story that didn't really need to be set in a world that was borrowed from J.K. Rowling, but still a fun mystery to see unwind. Art by someone more suited for a straight mystery. Serviceable inking by Leialoha, but with a standout job on issue 4 by Craig Hamilton. and covers that seem to me to be the only art, except Willingham's 2 pieces in the book, that have the right flavor. I guess I'd give it a 3 out of 5.
Well, Jamie.
And here I was gonna compliment him on his remembering of Ellery Queen, because as soon as I was reading that too, I was thinking about the old Jim Hutton Ellery Queen series, which I used to love, where he would right before the final commercial, before the mystery was revealed, he would literally turn to the camera and say, "Okay, I've got all the clues. Do you know who did it?" And then boom, he'd do it. I kind of felt that way from issue 4 to issue 5. All I can say is, Bruce, read on. Because like we were saying, this is a setup story. This is a setup for so much more, and I self-admit this is the weakest of the stories. I challenge you to read on. I'll even throw out the challenge now. Buy the next one. If you don't like it, I will send you the money for it. I honestly believe in this series that much.
And you're just saying that to Bruce.
Yeah,
right?
I was going to say,
Just
to Bruce.
just to Bruce Rosenberger.
100 people out there right now running to in-stock trade. Free trade. Animal Farm.
But that's just to Bruce. I believe in this series that much that if you buy that, and you don't have to take the challenge. I mean, that's fine if you don't want to do it. But I believe in this series that much that I will pay for it for you. And if you can honestly tell me that it's not better and you don't enjoy it.
I had a question. I don't know if I'm very up on my Fables or not. Did Snow White really have a sister, Rose Red?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I can't remember exactly how she fits in, but yes, Snow White's sister was Rose Red.
And I wasn't aware of that either. And then every time I'm reading it, I'm hearing Rose Red. I keep thinking of Stephen King with the house.
Yeah, because actually, I can't think of who did it. I have him at home, and I'll bring him in because I know you like to read, as much as you like to read. But they did different versions of these different fantasy and sci-fi writers did a whole bunch of different. I can't remember the name of it is escaping me right now. But one of them, I think it was called. One of them was called Rose Red, and it was about Snow White's sister. So I'm going to bring those in and let you see them.
That's funny that Bill says it about the artwork throughout. That's what I liked about it, that it was set in everyday, Bruce, that it was set in everyday type drawing, that it wasn't cartoony or fabulistic.
Well, one of the things he asked is it saleable? What could he have just done the murder mystery without the Fables? And yeah, you could have gotten a story, but where do you go from there?
Well, exactly.
Because it's all the background characters that make me go, oh, well, how are they going to play a part later?
Exactly.
That's the thing that, if anything, the background characters, not the main story of this first trade, but it's all the background and the potential. Now, that's the stuff that does hook me. If I had to pick one thing that makes me go, okay, what's going to make me read this? It's all that background stuff that is there. I mean, obviously, because this issue, the series is 41 issues old. So,
sure. Well, it's the same thing that where we were talking about Identity Crisis. The murder mystery was not the main part of the story. It was all the things that came off of that murder mystery that we found interesting. At least I found interesting with that story. Same with this. I'll say it again. It is the weakest of the storylines, main story in the book. It is total setup. Everything works off of the background, little small stories that you're getting, and that's why I say please read on.
I have a question for you, Jamie. Mm-hmm. In the next trade, when I was talking with Scott earlier today about it, he said that the story arcs are usually only like 4 or 5 issues long. Is that true in the next story arc or so?
Yeah, I believe there's 5 trades so far, and like I said, they're only on issue 41, and everything has been traded up to this last story arc, which is only about 4 or 5 deep. So yeah, it's not. They're not thick. They're not expensive, and they're quick reads, and it's only about 4 or 5 issues, but he tells a good story in those 4 or 5 issues.
See, and hearing you say that and saying that this is like the weakest storyline out of the whole run so far, to me is like, well, why didn't they just put the next storyline in if it's only 4 issues, which would have made a 9-issue trade and then you would have had 2 stories to read, and then if the second storyline was that much better, that would make you want to hook into it right away. Whereas if somebody reads the first one and goes like, well, it's not enough, and then they kind of lose that hook, lose that opportunity.
But unfortunately, I think though if they did that, then they'd also have to put the third one into it too. Because I'll be honest with you, the second one goes directly into the third one.
That would be a good segue into buying the second trade then.
Well, yeah. Yeah, but I mean, it's one of those... it was built or written, I think, to be told in these sections.
Yeah.
I really do, as opposed to another story that isn't... another story that may not be, so chopped up or so segmented.
Yeah.
This, it builds into the Animal Farm, which builds into the Winter of Fable Love, which builds into March of the, and so on and so forth, right down the line. And I just don't think they would have benefited from putting that second storyline into it. I think it's just one of those. They thought it was, and from everybody, with the exception of Bruce, it is intriguing enough. They found this story intriguing enough, the background characters intriguing enough, that they wanted to read the second one. They'd like to get the second one. They'd like to see where they're going with this, and I think that's the catch of it. And I again, Bruce, I will buy you that second book if you don't like it. I promise.
I mentioned the website before, the Fabletown Virtual Library. If you go on that site, she breaks down, I believe it's a female who runs it, each character. And actually, there's other characters on there that I didn't print out because they deal with later issues. And not only she give you little descriptions, but she also gives you links to other sites that have, tons more information, background story beyond the comic about all these characters. And there were some interesting things while I was reading it. The one that kind of stuck out in my mind in the very first, when you open up the first. Is it on the first page here? Yeah, where you see Bullfinch and Kipling Street. Kipling being, how do you pronounce it? Rudyard Kipling. And Bullfinch is the guy who basically, had a massive study on mythology. And his tomes are very important in the study of mythology and fables and things like that. The janitor is the Frog Prince, which, I didn't get. One of the obvious ones is the Black Forest Witch, is obviously the witch that was after Hansel and Gretel. The Baba Yaga and her hut, the house that has the chicken legs, that if you see it on the spread, actually shows up in Books of Magic, I think, the 4 issues by Neil Gaiman, where I forget which Trenchcoat Brigade character is taking him through all the fantasy lands, and he says, "Don't go off the path. Don't go." He goes off the path, and he meets Baba Yaga, and he meets the house. And it's like when I saw that in here, I went, "Oh, I know that." I didn't know she was a Russian folklore, but I.
If you've ever heard a musical composition called "Pictures at an Exhibition," there's the Baba Yaga's house, and that's
cool. There's also Anderson Street, which is obviously Hans Christian Andersen, which his more important fairy tales are like Little Mermaid, Emperor's New Clothes, and Princess and the Pea, and things like that. Let me see. There was she made an interesting supposition where Jack. There's so many Jacks in different fairy tales, like Jack Be Nimble, Jack Be Quick, Jack Sprat, Little Jack Jingle, Little Jack Horner,
Jack and the Beanstalk,
Jack and Jill, and she basically is saying, that is probably, she says, it could very easily be the same Jack, and if you look at the characterization of this in this book, I
don't know why, but I assumed it was Jack and the Beanstalk.
It was because he makes.
They make reference to that.
Yeah, he has his beans.
Okay, yeah, all right.
Yeah, and then later on they showed him on actually climbing the.
The that's all right.
Right. Yeah, and that's just her own little thing,
she's
dealing
wrong
with fairy tales. I think it's an interesting.
The hell does she know?
Get Willingham on the phone. Damn it!
How do you say Rajagul? That's all we want to know.
What was the other? I think you mentioned this, where she says like most of the characters that work actually in that building are all, where you think of like the Bridge Troll and you think of Bigby Wolf, they're all characters who are trying to redeem themselves, because you said about the amnesty thing, and there's a strong belief that they're all there trying to be good.
Oh, what's funny is I never put 2 and 2 together that they were saying Bigby as
Big
Big
Bad
B.
Wolf.
Big Wolf,
I think I was in my head. I was pronouncing it Begbie because of Train Spotting, and that one guy's character was Begbie. So I didn't know that if in the UK they pronounce Big B as Begbie, and so I just said Begbie, and I never thought of Big B. You know,
The other,
of course, that could just be me. You know, skipping right. Yeah.
The other, obviously, there's a lot of Wizard of Oz characters. There's the Chronicles of Narnia. There's Aslan the lion. They show him dead again. There's Don Quixote, Robin Hood. These are all like in the flashback scenes to Fable.
See, now what's interesting is, showing Narnia, it's like, well, that's only in the last 60 years or 50 years or something. It's like, now, it might be stretching it as far as what a fairy tale is. Like I'm thinking fairy tales of things that are, well over 100, 200 years old or whatever. So it's like, what do we see Frodo in an upcoming issue? I mean, but like you can't use. I wouldn't even think you could use that because of the copyright. But can he use Narnia? I mean, that's not on the public record yet. I don't think.
Is Narnia only 50, 60 years old?
C.S. Lewis was a contemporary of Tolkien.
Right.
They were like best friends. So
Because
they
he also
wrote
has
things.
Alice in Wonderland in here too.
Yeah, but they don't mention him by name.
Right. They just show
It's just
a
a line.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
So if you see a hobbit in the corner, it's Bilbo or something.
Well, I think what all they're saying is that all of these stories take place in the same mystical realm.
Right.
And there are various lands in that realm. I mean, they all coexist together, but their lands are all separate. It's all like, an entire world that this adversary just went into, and they started land by land slowly wiping out, the different stories.
He says, when the Emerald Kingdom fell. And then he goes on and says, then the kingdom of the great lion fell. So he's not
Can't
naming
say
He's not
Narnia.
saying Oz
Like
or
Narnia
Right.
can be trademarked and copyrighted, but the concept and such behind it.
But does it ever say anywhere in there how long they've actually been living in the New York City?
It says they've been living in the lands a couple hundred years. I know, because I was looking for that too. I was looking to see, especially with the storyline that I knew that they'd gone back and put Bigby into World War II. I couldn't remember exactly what they said, but I can't remember what issue it was. They do kind of make mention it's been a couple hundred years.
Yeah, because Bigby himself says something about that. From talking about, I guess, like as detectives do their job and such, but he's been doing it for like 200 years or something like that. So he does make some sort of reference to a time period.
Yeah, so you figure it's been at least a couple hundred years that they've been. Now, whether that they all congregated in New York City, in Fabletown, they really don't.
Yeah, they're
I
kind
don't
of vague
know.
about that.
I can't remember if they go into too much detail about how Fabletown was founded and so on and so forth. But you figure they've all escaped into this realm at least.
I think a couple characters have made reference to a timeline throughout the story.
Right.
Even Snow White herself
Mhm.
did something to that as well.
Well, I know they said something about, being around for hundreds of years, because somebody in there said 300 or 400 years, but I didn't know if that was from the time that they were first created or if that was the time that they've been living in New York, because that would make sense then, how you're talking about Oz and Narnia.
Is Bluebeard a fairy tale, or is that more
See, I thought that was
a
more
legend, a fable? Would that be?
Yeah, it's legends and fables and
Yeah.
things like that. He's along that line.
Which is such a unique, when you look at Bluebeard. When you hear the name Bluebeard, and I'm thinking, uh-oh, and then you look, and it's like totally not what you would think.
Yeah. Or like Cinderella. She's
Yeah.
a foul-mouthed bitch. It's like great. I love it.
That's what I love about it.
Yeah.
That's exactly how I picture her.
Yeah. She would be that way.
Absolutely.
After
And that's
being
With
dicked
your
over by.
glass slippers.
But that's one of the intriguing things that I liked about this. I love the characterizations of the fabled characters.
Yeah, and just
It's not what you would think. If you're thinking of just getting these fables, coming
Well,
in the stories.
I was waiting for Prince Charming because of the whole Into the Woods thing, and I was like, okay, I want to see how he's doing Prince Charming. And as soon as we got to that scene with the pretty waitress, I
Yeah.
went, oh, here he comes.
You know it.
I knew it. I knew exactly how he was going to be.
and
that-
he
that
turns
was-
on the charm and she
Oh.
falls for him head over.
Yeah, and
It's
the
like-
lovemaking scene that he did too. It's not even lovemaking, but it was classic. The explanation that he said, about learning your cockery, brilliant. That was just brilliant.
Well, I like he's also telling, I'm going to take some money and I'll see you later.
And
I'll be
do
back.
my wash.
He's a contemporary player.
He's my idol.
Jesus.
That's the power I want. If I
Peter
was a
just lost half
superhero.
his fans right there.
Do you think it was a power? Do you think it was something or was it just because?
Well, see,
he's
that's what I was
so
wondering
damn
too.
charming?
I'm thinking like when he was with the waitress and then left that note and stuff like that. I'm reading it and I'm thinking Purple Man. It's like I'm just telling you. He's not asking or would you please do this or blah blah blah. It's like I just met you tonight. I did my deed and you enjoyed yourself. So here's the list. I'll be back later. And by the way, I took some money and blah. So it's like okay.
Yeah, I almost felt it was like a glow when they talk about like elves and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They have like a glow. I almost felt it was like I could kind of. They shut up.
Like pheromones.
Shut up, Mister. Shut up, Mister.
Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's pheromones that they just.
Yeah. So again, another little twist when we were talking about all this. I love the fact that if Beauty didn't actually love Beast or kind of got mad at him, he started reverting back to the Beast.
Yeah.
I just noticed that whole scene where Prince Charming is doing it with the waitress.
Yeah.
There's
two girls
leaning against the wall listening.
I didn't notice that. And he says coxmanship. Sorry, not coxmanship. I have to start using that word.
Bring that one back.
Like he just did.
In reference to Bruce's thing, I am looking at the artwork in the back of the book that he said, and that's drawn by Bill Willingham. It is really, really nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Maybe he'll do a special or something.
I wouldn't mind, or at least maybe do covers or something like that. But I didn't think
or
the art was
flashback sequence.
Well,
or
that
something,
would be
6 or 8 pages. That would be cool.
The art did not distract me like the way he talked about it. I mean, I liked it in the sense that it added a sense of realism to everything. Mm-hmm. That it wasn't too cartoony because I thought that was important. Mm-hmm. I think if it would have been too cartoony, I don't think you would have taken it as seriously. I mean, the story.
I guess I'm used to some Vertigo books being, they take
it's
a little more
style.
chances with their artwork.
Exactly.
So when I opened it, I went, "Oh, that's not what I expected."
Right.
Although
it wasn't edgy at all.
Right.
Looking at issue 4.
With
that
Craig.
does look a whole lot nicer than the other issues.
That's
well,
Craig Hamilton.
And that's Craig Hamilton,
It's
yeah.
a different inker, yeah.
And you look at their styles. I mean, I was kind of impressed. I've always been aware and have followed a lot of Steve Leialoha's inking, and he has a very unique style to it, and I enjoyed it on other stuff. When I saw that he was part of the artwork, when I looked at the artwork, I didn't believe it was him inking it. It doesn't look like his normal stuff that he does. So, I mean, I'm not putting it down. I think it's good, and I think Steve is doing the same quality of stuff he's been doing since the early 70s. So,
this is
kudos to him as well.
This is one of those books that I would love to see original art, to see what is being either taken away or what he is included. Like, is he finishing things, or like are there because there's line work, but there's not much in the way of like. Much shading and even the coloring doesn't. This is not one of those books where I go, the coloring is taking over the inker's job. This is the color's just pretty much staying true to what they need to do.
He's bearing very. I'm trying to think of the word, but
there's not much. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of pre-computer coloring.
Right.
He's practicing excellent coxmanship.
Yeah. There's not much shading and grading.
No.
It comes in very.
It's not digitally painted.
Yeah.
It's colored.
Yeah. And that's kind of nice, maybe that's why I think it's so different.
Well, I kind of liked how when they were showing the flashback scenes, how the whole page washed over in red so that that there was something that was happened in a previous life. And I really agree with Shane about the way that he put expressions on the people's faces. Not being, a big comic person and only being exposed to a handful of things. I thought this was very well done.
Yeah, I think this is one of those books. I wonder what if you have a girlfriend out there that doesn't read comics. I wonder if you could I wonder how they would do, because I mean the mystery, unless they, I guess, are inter-mysteries, maybe they'll get into it. But will they also get into it because of all the fables and things like that? So.
Well, that's one of the things when Kevin asked me to read it, I looked at it and I'm like, yeah, whatever. And I opened it up and I really, really liked it. And I agree with Tasha. I read a lot of like murder and mystery and things like that. And I just thought all around it was a very good story. And I like the twist with the fairy tale characters.
Right. I think it's kind of funny that it opens with the whole Beauty and the Beast thing, because we all have preconceived notions about Beauty and the Beast, or because of the Disney movie,
right?
Happy and go lucky, and they got married, and da 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 da. And then they're coming
it's in. It's like Kramer versus Kramer.
Yeah, like marriage counseling, and it's and she's not all light and fluffy herself, although she's gorgeous. I love that dress she has on. But and it's kind of like wham, it hits you
Here
right
comes
away.
the coxmanship.
Yes. I mean, look at that panel there where she's bent over.
I
had a crush on the Disney.
I was just
Beauty
going
as
with
well.
a whole nother level of geekery.
See, and I kind of agree with you. I think the women, drawn in that book are done very well. I mean, Rose Red is cool looking, and Cinderella, Snow White, they all are drawn, and they're not, they're not this stick figure models or anything like that. They're drawn well.
They look like normal women.
Right. And they do. They have an appeal to them. It is appealing. So I share your cocksmanship.
No, you may not.
Say, wait a second.
Just don't cross swords.
Matt's listening to this, and he's having a field day in his head.
I'm so glad he's not here. Every time we said fairy.
Say, once he starts listening to this, he's going to be on the floor.
Yeah.
Oh, why wasn't I there?
He's going to go into overload because he has nobody to respond to.
And there's simple things like the pig. He has no point in the story other than just every now and then he pops up and it's like he's sleeping.
It's like comic relief.
Passed out. Yeah, he takes a smoke in Bigby's apartment. He tries to sneak into the kitchen. Yeah, it's kind of fun.
Good stuff.
I don't know if I would have, because I'm not that much into mysteries, where I'm like, oh, I got to try to figure it out. But yeah, I mean, the clues are there. After I read it, I went, oh, okay, yeah. But I didn't. When I initially read it, I really didn't look for that.
Speaking of mysteries, I mean, you brought it up, Jamie. Have you ever read May's Agency?
Oh yeah. That's
because that was so
Maze.
Ellery Queen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all the references and stuff they put in that book and stuff. I mean,
Ellery Queen was actually even in the book,
right?
Yeah.
So that's why I was wondering.
No, definitely. Yeah. I followed that from I stumbled upon it at our local shop, and definitely I highly recommend it. I highly recommend that you get the trade. The trade. Now that they're going to redo it, it's well worth getting.
Yeah, I'm very looking forward to doing that, and that's going to be my recommendation for the book of the month for an independent at one time.
And Michael W. Barr, who wrote that,
mm-hmm.
that was when I can remember reading back when he was writing that, he was saying that was he would literally write little mysteries, and he would start as any mystery writer did, I guess, with the end and work his way back. So that he took that very, very seriously, and it showed every issue once a month you were reading a little mystery.
Yep.
Du jour means of the day, like soup du jour.
Yes.
I love this letter where he signs it, "Your handsome Prince du jour."
I do. Just paging through it again, just looking at the art. I love the art. I mean, I am enamored by the art. I think everything looks so good.
Maybe my whole problem is that everything is so different nowadays. When you get something that is just art for the story's sake, it kind of makes you just have to stop and look at it. Maybe that's why I'm...
Mm-hmm. And see, I think it's important, and again, I don't know if this is by accident or if it's by thought and intention that, like you said with the coloring, that I feel it's important that it isn't over-colored and digitally painted. Mm-hmm. Because it fits. It fits so well into this book. Because the way the art is drawn so realistically, but then to put that type of just coloring on it rather than digital painting, it just adds so much to it. Everything just works, So I visually, it's stunning. I mean,
now, Jamie, you said Mark Buckingham's work doesn't stray too far, although he can be kind of a little more cartoony, right? Or did he tone it down for the next?
He can be, but I mean, he's more. I see the reference in the style that he is not very detail-oriented. He has a very clean line art style, which looks very similar to what we're looking at now. But he did have certain things that...
Yeah, certain characters look different, I will say. I mean, the Pinocchio you meet in here is not the Pinocchio he gives you. But it's, it's still clean enough. You know who all the characters are. You're not confused on anybody. He puts his own, kind of spin on things. But like Kevin said, it's just his artwork is just very clean and just lends itself very well to this series. If you're out there looking rather than collect the trades, looking to collect the individual series, there is actually one special that they came out with called, I believe it was The Last Castle, which the story actually takes place in the other realm. It's a story of Little Boy Blue and Little Red Riding Hood, and them trying to escape. So if you're collecting the series, the individual issues, you're going to need to try to find that one. I believe that one is also traded with the other ones because it's kind of an important story. It's the first time you really go into the other realm and see what was happening over on that side. But go out and get it. I mean, I'm beaming inside that everybody in this room, has taken to it the way I was hoping they would.
Bill Willingham has a site. It's www.billwillingham.com. Easy enough. And we mentioned it before. He's writing. Is he still writing Robin at the moment?
I believe so. Yes.
Okay. And obviously, Fables has put the spotlight on him a little bit. That he's that they're pushing him to write all these other things. Robin, and of course, Day of Vengeance. He's also writing that as well, which is wrapped up, and there's going to be a special later. They just announced. Is he writing anything else currently? Or is that it? I think that might be it.
I think that's
as
far as I know.
So good for him for, and one thing I like about the Vertigo thing, we said it before, is that, they're not afraid to commit to the long term. So
Right.
if he wants to keep writing, and he said in an interview, sometimes I'm writing a story arc and I come up with an idea for like a later thing, and he's like, I got to stop and write that. So it's almost like he has constant ideas funneling into him. So
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and I also have a feeling he lives in our area because he's been at Wizard World Philly for the last 2 or 3 years. And normally you'll find people who live in a certain area will continue to go to a show, the same show each year. So if you want to go see him, I would say probably Wizard World Philly this year. He'll be there again. I know I've talked to him a couple times when he was down there.
I look forward to talking to him now, to see, being able to reflect upon elementals and the history there, and now having read this by the time that I get to Wizard World Philly, if he's there, I'd be more than happy to
I wonder if he'll be at New York.
I was thinking the
Maybe.
same thing, too.
Yeah.
Might be.
Because then you don't have to wait so long.
Yeah.
Because that's in February.
How would you guys rate this to the other books of the month, or is it too different to compare it, or something else?
I think we've hit so diametrically different books for each time we've done it. It's tough to really say. Everybody knows I love this book, so.
I mean, for me, I can say as far as being consistent is that they've all are top quality books. They're all top quality stories. Every book of the month that we've recommended so far has been very well done, very professionally done, and great stories, great art. There's nothing, So I mean, I rate it as a book in itself, but that's the only comparison I can make towards the other books because it isn't. These aren't similar. There's nothing really similar about the other books of the month we did. But
I mean, if this was the only thing that ever came out, this right here, because that's kind of how I take these books of the month. Like when we did Walking Dead, I didn't read the other two because I wanted to just see how this, especially with the whole trade mentality, of like, when Robert Kirkman was saying that he meant that book to be read, as a solid thing. I kind of do agree with Bruce. I probably would give it a 3 out of 5 just for. Not for his reasons, though. I mean, I didn't quite agree with his reasons, but
I would have given it at least 4, maybe 4.5, because I enjoyed every bit of it and was raring for more. So if that's whatever that means, that's how many stars you give it. You know?
I'll go with Brian 4.5 for me too.
I'll go 4. I'll go a solid 4.
Cool.
I'd say 4 to 4.5 as well.
Anybody?
Well, I can't really compare it to the other ones, can I?
No,
Because
we're not
haven't-
comparing.
We're not comparing.
Just
Oh,
as
okay.
its own. If this was the only 5 issues that
I'd
existed.
say 4 then.
And I've already said 4, and read the other ones, and you're gonna come across a couple 5s in there.
Cool. Something to look forward to.
Awesome.
There we
So
go.
who wants to announce what next month is? October. Whose idea was it?
That was mine.
Well, then you explain
do
it.
it.
I decided that for the October book of the month, and going with the trend that we've been going DC, Marvel, Independent, or Marvel, DC, Independent, however it worked out.
DC's first. Like
yeah, DC was first.
so
That's
we're
right.
up
Because
to
this was
Marvel now,
So I knew Marvel was going to be in October, and when we were discussing it, I thought, well, let's go with the Halloween theme, and what more can you go with? So I recommended the Essential Tomb of Dracula. I thought that would Volume 1. I thought that would be. I either thought that or Werewolf by Night Essential, but that is only coming out in October, so that really doesn't give people a chance to read it. So, Tomb of Dracula is up to Volume 4 in the Essentials, I think, already. I think
Yes, that's
there's
correct.
4 volumes out, so I mean, there's plenty of material there. And when you're especially looking at 25 to 27 issues a volume, so there's plenty of material there.
If it's 1 through 25, an issue of Werewolf by Night, and an issue is giant-sized chillers.
So I thought that would be cool to recommend and go along with a Halloween theme for October.
and keeping with their tradition, InStockTrades.com is offering it for 40% off. They're actually offering volumes 1 through 4. If you want to get more than just volume 1, you can get all 4 of them at 40% off. So
what's that discounted to? Does it have?
He didn't update it yet.
Okay.
We're recording this Wednesday. They're hearing it Thursday. He's putting it live on Thursday morning.
There you go.
So,
and this is
they're usually like $16 a piece. So if you 40% off, that's what more? Yeah, that's $90 then.
And this is the essential.
No, like $900.
2 is 6. This is the essential format, Marvel's essential line. So it's black and white, which, I mean, hopefully they don't tweak the Gene Colan artwork. I mean, hopefully they keep it.
I've started reading it. I own it already, and no, they don't. It's very much like reading that book that we got sent from Tomorrow's. The black and white, his artwork is just magnificent.
See, that's what I think. Being in that, just quick comment, that being in I'm anxious to see it in the black and white format to really see it without the color, if it really captures that mood, especially for Dracula. That I think that would fit so well.
It'll cost you $10.19. So 25 comics for $10. I mean,
can't beat that.
You get all 4 of them, and another comic. It's free shipping. So
figure that out. I mean, you pay $40 and you're getting 100 comics worth of material.
Yeah. Of good material. That's not cheap to find. You don't find those. You don't find this in the dollar bins.
No, because that Blade issue, the issue that introduces Blade alone, is like $50-$60.
I mean, these classic Marvel horror comics, even with DC's, did it as well. These were written by talented authors, so these weren't taken as not seriously. These were taken very seriously and treated that way.
And it is Gene Colan artwork, and Marv Wolfman wrote from issue 7 or 8 on. But who do you know?
Jerry Conway.
Jerry Conway started it. And they went on to write it. I mean, we shouldn't really be talking about it, but they went on to write it for 70 issues, straight. So
actually, Volume 1 will be cheaper because that's a $14.99 cover price and not a $16.99.
Well, there you go.
So there you go.
And also coming out in October as well in Marvel, if you want to try to email your stores or call your stores and email somebody online, whoever you go to. Marvel is putting out one of their handbooks, official handbook, and it's all on their horror characters.
All the monsters.
Yep, and they're all doing, I think Dracula's right smack on the front cover.
Frankenstein. And
they're also doing these one-shots that have to deal with some horror stuff.
This is Monster Month from Marvel.
So take a look for that if that's something that appeals to you.
Yeah, because there's a Devil Dinosaur coming out from
Eric Powell's doing all those one-shots, which he does the Goon.
Well, he's doing the covers for all the one-shots. Devil Dinosaur is the only one he's actually doing the interior.
He's doing the intro, okay. Right.
Well, considering I just read a 600-page book on Dracula, I guess I'm going to have to read this, too.
Yeah, and as Jamie said to us earlier, you need to read this. If you're going to do this with us, you need to read one of these a day, because these are not... These are, they're a little wordy, and they're, it's a lot of issues in there.
They're not quick reads.
Yeah.
I mean, Fables, I think it took me... I sat down and read it all at one shot, and I think it took me a little over an hour. I think, like I said, I lost 5 minutes with the Beast, but I'd say about an hour, 10 hour, and 15 minutes to read that. And I know reading
I just got what you said.
I was thinking, is he talking about going to the bathroom?
Did anybody read the prose story in the back?
Not yet, no.
No, I kind of...
Slackers. I read it. It's got...
well, good for you.
It's all about Bigby Wolf.
Well, see, I want to read it, but I focused on reading the issues and wanted to focus on that. I didn't.
Well, what's interesting about it is...
What reminded me of is Starman with the shade. Remember that used to be... James Robinson used
his
to do
journal.
that.
Yep. Journal.
Shade
but
journal
it adds some insight to the whole Bigby Wolf and Snow White dynamic. So...
Yeah, and it goes into the whole fairy tale land before they moved to Fabletown. So I thought it really put some more perspective on stuff.
Oh yeah, it has, with his it makes you wonder about the wolf, because the whole motivation. So I know we can spoil, but I don't want to spoil for you guys when you read it.
Yeah, I want to read it because I will read it. It's just that I focused on the issues at hand first. So.
Sometimes when I see text pages like that, those are almost some things I read first. Like
see, I'm not the opposite.
I'll be honest with you. I gloss over them because it's weird.
My kryptonite.
I love books. I love reading books, but when I'm reading a comic book, I want to read a comic book. If it was published separately, if Bill Willingham wrote a novel, then I might buy it and I'd get all into it. But I see that and I just go, I'm not reading that. That's not a comic book. You know, like I did the same thing with Watchmen. All that stuff at the end of each, I just went next issue.
You gotta read that stuff.
It's not a comic book. I'm out of here.
Same thing with League. You gotta read that. Starman.
Yeah, Starman.
There's
so much in that Shade Journal.
Yeah.
But see, I'm not the extreme like you are. Like, I don't read it right away, but I don't do like you and just completely ignore it. I'll read the issues first, and then I'll read that text last.
Oh, there's a point why they're there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I always read that.
Do you find reading
Draw
it
me
first?
pictures.
No, I didn't read this one first.
Oh.
But like some of the Starman stuff I did, and some of the 5 years later Legion stuff had some text things in the back that I would just get curious at what it was about, and then I'd stop and go back and read the book. And it certainly adds.
James Robinson's Shade Journal really made me, from now on, I will always read that stuff. I used to gloss over it, and I either would kind of skim it and just get whatever is going on, but I would never really read in depth. When I was reading Starman and the Shade Journal was in the back, I read all of that and loved every minute of it.
Those text pages in the
trade?
In the trades? Does anybody know?
I don't know. I wouldn't read them if they were there.
Did you know while you were avoiding them? Did you notice that they were there?
I can't recall.
I don't know. I didn't buy the trade, so I mean, I have all the issues for that. So I didn't buy the trade, so I don't know if they're included or not. That's an interesting question.
Volume 1 of Tomb of Dracula will cost you $9. So I mean, that's really
so it's all that comic.
I mean, I'm looking on the website, and you're seeing Volume 1 is what Volume 1 is $14.99, and then the other three are $16.99. Okay. So there you go, $9 for one and $10 for the other three. So.
And also the tradition of in-stock trades just being so great about discounting. Once again, Fables reached #1 on InStockTrades.com.
As their #1
yeah,
seller.
So we know some of you are buying what we recommend, and that makes us feel good, not because
we get anything from it.
Right, it's just because we're trying hard to pick books that are good.
That might not have the exposure that people have, like new readers who aren't exposed to that material.
If these guys had never said, read Tomb of Dracula, I would never read Tomb of Dracula. I didn't read it yet, so I can't say if I like it or not. But I tell you what, after we got that Tomorrow's book on Gene Colan, I'm revved up now to look at some Gene Colan pictures. So, for that reason alone, it's worth $9.
And that's what I felt after reading this. I thought, you know what, now I comprehend and kind of get a feel for what all the people in the forum have always been saying, like when we recommend something and they read it and they all love it, you know.
Like with Walking Dead, with me anyway. I don't know. They all wanted us to do Walking Dead. We did Walking Dead, and we all loved it.
So between Walking Dead and this, I mean, those are two books that I wouldn't have picked up myself, but being recommended and reading them for the Book of the Month treatment, I thoroughly enjoyed them and will continue to read them. So I know exactly what goes on, and I can understand why every time we do a Book of the Month, it ends up being the #1 seller of the trade for in-stock trades.
And we will never do Deadpool. Those of you who are on the forum who know what I'm talking about.
And I don't think a Venom selection will ever make it.
No.
It's a whole reference to IGN put up a whole your ultimate bookshelf should have all these 18 pages of stuff. And one of the first thing I clicked on was D, and it said Deadpool, and I said goodbye.
Yeah, you're done. The only thing I would ever recommend for Venom would be the Lethal Protector miniseries. That was actually the first.
Are we
the
really
first
going to talk about Venom on a Book of the Month Club episode?
But I wouldn't recommend it for a Book of the Month Club. But if I would have to say, if somebody would ask me, that's the only one I could ever even recommend. And that's as far as I go with Venom, as everybody knows. Don't even touch Carnage. No way.
Fables, Vertigo, Fables, Bill Willingham.
Tomb of Dracula.
Have we said everything we can say?
I just want one more thing. I just want to say one more thing. And it's not about Book of the Month Club. This is just my personal Shiznit Pimp pick.
Soapbox.
Yes. Go out. This is going to go up on the 29th of September. On the 30th of September, a movie is coming out that I want you all to go see because I want more of them and I want people to go see it.
My Little Pony?
Yes, My Little Pony. No.
The Care Bears strike again.
Strawberry Shortcake in New York.
Shark Boy and Lava Girl 2?
Serenity.
Oh, Serenity.
Serenity from Joss Whedon, all you Buffy fans, in the unfortunately short-lived Firefly series. please go out and see it if you trust my picks. I haven't seen it yet, but I know it's not going to be bad from what I've heard of it and what I've heard people say about it. I just want to see us open big because I want to see more. So go out there, spend your $5, and at a matinee, I'm not saying go spend $9. Go spend $5 at a matinee and make it number one so they'll want to do more. And that's it for me.
Okay.
Tomb of Dracula.
There it is. Yep, you got a month. Start reading.
Yep. Get cracking.
You're going to need it.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is our most ambitious book of the month club yet.
Now you're scaring me.
You see how big those things are?
You got to read
Yeah.
an issue a
Gotta
day.
read it.
You just have to. I mean, there's 25 issues, so you have very few days to skip.
And although
Either
this,
that, unless you get constipated and you can spend it.
although this hasn't happened for this episode, but it did for a few of the other ones, we should also make sure that we read the entire thing. I think we should.
I've read the
I
entire
know.
thing of every single
I know.
one so far.
I have. What was the one that I Daredevil Guardian? I've read it before, but I didn't finish it. So I mean, that's why I'm saying it. I think because this is a huge book.
An undertaking.
I think, and to do it right,
No pun intended for Halloween.
we ourselves, if we're asking our listeners to do the same, so
Yeah.
just throw
Gotta-
it out there.
gotta do
Challenge. Always challenge ourselves.
The gauntlet is thrown. You're just like an artist now. You got to do a page a day. Now you got to do a book a day. You got to read a book
That's
a day.
right.
Now you know what it feels like
Thank God I'm on the hopper once a day.
for extended periods of time.
Disgusting.
Right down the toilet.
Practice your cocksmanship.
All right. See you next month.
See ya.